What is up? Welcome to the NFL Rundown, brought to you courtesy of Run Pure Sports and Run Pure Bets. I'm your host, Spread Astaire, putting the proper overlay up top. There we go. Brought JJ in today. JJ, you do great on the NFL. You have for years. So excited to talk to you today as we break down the AFC South. Kind of an interesting division here for content purposes because I think that there's a lot of variables with the teams. I don't know if there's a real Super Bowl contender in here, though. What do you think, JJ?
Yeah, I mean, you got all these juicy divisions, and I get nominated for this shit fest. No, but look, these divisions on a per division basis are just as exciting as another. So, but yes, I agree with you. There's probably not much of Super Bowl aspirations coming out of here, but there's still definitely topic points for each team. And I'll be honest, this division is very much up for grabs. So I'm looking forward to chatting on it with you guys.
Yeah, Tyler, I was high on Tennessee last year. I think I put them in at 10-1 to make the Super Bowl last year when they were the number one seed, and I thought that was crazy. Market was right. They couldn't even get out of their first game there. Then it seems like their roster's worse. And the main one that I'm worried about, of course, is the loss of A.J. Brown, who I've read different things about how high people rank him. I think I must be ranking him higher than most, experts or scouts because he's not tiered as high as I expected. What are you thinking here for the AFC South before we dive right in?
Yeah, I mean, just like you said, I do think Tennessee kind of just patched their way together. I don't think they got much better than they were last year. I don't think there's really much of a Super Bowl contender unless the Colts just catch a very easy path and walk in. It would take a miracle for any of the other three teams to make it there. And just like JJ said, this division is up for grabs. I could see 3 of the 4 teams winning this, and it wouldn't surprise me anyway. Like if Jacksonville took that step forward and the 2 teams in front of them just middled out, could see Jacksonville stealing this division. So one of the uglier divisions, but just like we said, we got talking points here.
Oh, yeah, let's dive in. I mean, I think from the preview perspective, it's a lot of fun. I felt on some of the other division previews we did, our takes were right in lockstep with most of the general consensus. I think we have more chance for some variance here. Let's start with the Indianapolis Colts over 9.5 wins, but that's juiced all the way to -170 on Bet Online. So, of course, I'd look for a different book and just play the 10. Let's go ahead and handicap it at the 10. 10 wins here for the Colts, JJ. One of your favorite players, right? Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. And, of course, the switch at quarterback now. 3 years, 3 past their prime quarterbacks in a row, right? They had Phillip Rivers, trade for Carson Wentz, who I know he was young and there was some potential there, but kind of already knew what he was as far as a starting quarterback. Now you bring in Matt Ryan, who's another older guy. Still, the rest of the team is really good, especially the offensive line and the defense, stuff that we love to handicap. JJ, what do you think of the Indianapolis Colts?
Yeah, I think offensively, any offense under Frank Wright, I'm always going to be bullish on. As for this year, it's hard. I mean, you just got a bunch of mids at quarterback, right? I mean, Ryan Foles. I mean, if you even like Sam Ellinger at this level, but receiver for this team, obviously behind Pittman, like it's tough to love anything, right? I mean, Alec Pierce. How do you trust much of him? And Paris Campbell's kind of been like a blah guy for most of his career. Even like at tight end with Mo Alley Cox, like he's had some injury issues, but like this dude's a basketball player playing tight end. But you know what you get with the Colts, right? You get big Jonathan Taylor and you get the huge offensive line. They're obviously going to run a lot through him. And yeah, I mean, you want to talk about a guy I couldn't be more wrong on. I didn't think he would find much success at this level. But the guy's got extreme burst in that second level. And he's got a lot of quickness too, which makes him good. And the fact that he's been able to read this offensive line much better. You guys remember how he first started the year? Man, dude was running to his offensive lineman. It felt like once a game. But yeah, I mean, I get why this team is the cream of the crop of this division. But like, man, I couldn't even imagine laying $1.35 with them to win it. I mean, obviously Tennessee's probably going to be a little more live. And I'm not like completely sold on lack of Jacksonville either. To me, Houston seems like a dead duck in this division. I know it's not saying much, but like to me, we'll talk on Jacksonville more. But like, to me, the big thing with the Colts is going to be defensively, right? Because any team under Frank Wright's going to have enough offensive firepower on a weekly basis. To me, it's like puppets. I mean, the NFL, you have your great offensive minds, great defensive minds, and the NFL players can just kind of string along based on schemes and schematics and game planning. I think Wright does a good job every week from an offensive perspective. Wentz was a little too turnover prone, probably for his systems. Matt Ryan likely to be a little cleaner in that aspect. But also interested to see what they do with Foles, because Foles has typically been a clean player as well. And he's got experience under Wright. So it's good to see them back together. But needless to say, I am a little surprised this team is this bigged up to win this division. But interested in what you guys think.
Yes, a couple things there. Wentz, it's so funny. If you looked at the statistics, he didn't seem that bad. Like his touchdown to interception ratio wasn't that bad.
Timing
But you
of
watched the game and they were just back-breaking times and terrible mistakes, right? So that's one of those things where football statistics can be misleading. Could be an interesting year there for this Jonathan Taylor take. I know he's his third year, and normally I say that's my favorite year to attack a guy. But let's be honest. They did a lot of running with him in college. He's had a lot of usage the first 2 years. We've seen these backs, and people will play fantasy football year after year, right? It's almost like you don't want the number one pick because it's really hard, unless you're Derrick Henry, to just keep doing this over and over again. Are you worried about all the wear and tear on Taylor? Or like, we're just having some fun here. If you're in fantasy drafts, would you still take him one? I'll tell you what, I'm a little concerned there. I don't want that number one pick because I'm worried he's not going to make it through the year.
Yeah, I think tread on the tires is definitely a bit worrisome. It's probably some of the reason why he dropped to where he did in the draft, because he had a lot of upside from college. But needless to say, you hate predicting, injuries, if you will, but you just kind of see it, right? When running backs take that type of load for multiple years, and it happens, right? McCaffrey looked like a god, and now just looks kind of fragile after all those years of touches. Now, granted, he's a much smaller guy, and you've seen guys where it works out, like a guy like Adrian Peterson for years where it can work. And Taylor's obviously in great shape, but man, it's like you get that much volume, you're going to risk that type of exposure on a pick like that in fantasy. I guess it depends, right? Because he seems like an auto first or second pick this year, but it's not a crazy take. I think they're going to have to run the offense through him, but I'd also go as far to say, with the lack of true weapons this team has on the outside, Pittman's good, but he's going to have to take a real next step up, because he's going to start seeing a bunch of bracket coverage over him, especially again with their lack of other weapons. Slow the box against this team, force guys like Matt Ryan to beat you, which is why maybe I'm not so bullish on this team. But because to me, there's only one Derrick Henry. The rest of the league is just kind of behind him from the running back position. I think you can stack the box against guys like Jonathan Taylor and force other guys in the Colts to beat you, and I think you're going to see that recipe throughout the season.
Tyler, when I look at this and we say that the Colts are the favorite to win this division, to me, it's more of a referendum on the rest of the division than us giving the Colts some props, right? Because the class of the division, the winners last year, the Tennessee Titans, of course, and we'll get into them next. We can say that they declined significantly just in terms of roster and level of talent. I'll tell you what, I'm worried about this team as far as Matt Ryan, and I know these older quarterbacks can look great. I just don't know if he's going to be able to do it consistently. Of course, he gets a much better line, but still, he's really shown signs of regression here these last couple years. And let's be honest, people are getting, and this happens in the NBA too with LeBron, people are getting fooled because two of the greatest players ever are pulling this off, and Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. This doesn't happen often, right, where these players keep going good. And I know they've changed the rules so quarterbacks can stay longer in the league and they're a little bit safer. But regardless, anyone who's my age knows that's when that real drop-off physically begins. That's when you really start to feel it. What are your thoughts on this Indianapolis Colts team?
Yeah, I could see the worry coming from the Matt Ryan side, but this roster's pretty much the same. They did it with Phillip Rivers before he went home to play with all his kids. Carson Wentz I'd rank him probably 2 tiers lower than what Matt Ryan still is. I'm just not a big fan of him. So I think Matt Ryan will play fine behind this line. You look at what he dealt with in Atlanta the last few years. He was getting mauled every play. Even though he had a few key weapons, like now you give him the offensive line, a run game to build around him. They picked up some key pieces on the defense too. They picked up Stephon Gilmore, who I think could still have an impact in the secondary. And they took Yannick Ngakoue off of the Vegas Raiders to build that defensive line. If they can get some pressure on the opposing quarterbacks and stop the run game there, it's just going to let Taylor and Matt Ryan just work the run, work the play action, hit Pittman deep, maybe get some Alec Pierce involved in there. So I could see it working out for them. But just like you said, I think it's more of the division being so bad than this team being really good. Like their win total at 10, I think they can get to 10 wins. I also think they can only win 5 games if you look at the schedule. They start off Houston, Jacksonville. They should be 2-0 right there. But then they go Kansas City, Tennessee.
Maybe they always lose to Jacksonville.
Yeah, that is true. But I believe that game's at home. Or no, that first game's at Jacksonville. Okay, so they could be 1-1
That's
there.
been a problem spot for them.
Yeah, that could be 1-1 there. But let's say 2-0. Then they go Kansas City, Tennessee, Denver. So my guess is 2-3 right there through the first 5. Then they go Jacksonville, Tennessee, Washington again. I think they can get 2 of those 3, maybe all 3. And then New England, Las Vegas, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Dallas before the bye. They could lose all those games.
That's a
and
tough
then
schedule.
They have a late bye, and then they come out of the bye going Minnesota, the Chargers, the Giants, and Houston. Man, that's a tough schedule the more you look at it.
It's a little easier after the bye, though, right? You can see them gaining some momentum into the playoffs. But still, I think the concerns that we have for this team are all valid. 10 out of 17, though, I don't know. So let's say, the proverbial $300, Tyler. You getting over or under this 10 wins?
Can I switch it up a little bit?
Sure.
Because if they get the 10 wins, they're a wild card team. There's no way they get a bye. Just bet them to lose in the wild card round at 2-1 instead of taking the over 10. You know what I mean? They're getting a better price. I don't see them winning a playoff game. And if they sneak the division win in, they're going to be a wild card team. I think they lose that first round.
Wow, that's a good look. What are you thinking, JJ?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, for me, I can't lay anything with this with this team in relation to them going over their win total. I think consider me bearish on this team in general. The defense has some question marks. I know that they made some changes there, which could help. My problem is like Wright's teams never play good defense. I don't really care who he's had. They just never play good defense. He's very offensive minded. And if that offense is going to stutter in any way because they stack the box and Ryan regresses even more, this team's going to have to get into shootouts or quite a few shootouts. And yes, they play in a weak division, which helps. But Tyler mentioned they're at a division schedule. It's not exactly, great for them. Now, granted, a lot of these teams probably more than likely have very similar schedules in that sense because you play the same outside divisions anyway, outside of a few games. But for the most part, consider me pretty bearish on this team. I'll be a little bullish on the Titans, but I think for me, like the value is going to be in the Jaguars in this division. But we'll talk on that when we get there.
All right. Anything else on the Colts before we move on?
The only other thing I was looking at is if you think Jonathan Taylor does repeat what he did last year, Offensive Player of the Year 10-1. I don't think that's a terrible bet.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm kind of. Didn't he win it last year? No, he lost to.
Cup won it last year.
Yeah. He was second though, right?
Yeah.
All right, I guess so. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't like the repeat winner idea, but okay, if he was second last year, you're right. At 10-1, that is a pretty good look. So let's talk about the Tennessee Titans. Who, like I said, I love this team last year, and boy, did they let me down. Losing to Cincinnati after having the number 1 seed, the only team that had the bye, come out really looking flat. Tannehill had a bad performance, and the performance in the playoffs kind of undid 2 to 3 good years of play behind Tannehill and the quarterback because, in getting ready for this and kind of seeing what the opinion is around the football handicapping space, people seem pretty down on Tannehill. They drafted Malik Willis, so we'll see how that says the franchise feels about Tannehill here. I'll tell you what, Malik Willis' style of play seems like something that Vrabel would do. I could see them kind of copying the Ravens there and going for that style of play there. So it'd be interesting to see if this team gets off to a slow start, if they do make the change there. Once again, though, with Vrabel at the helm, he's almost like a mini Belichick, where regardless of the roster, I still think this defense is going to be really good. That means a lot in the NFL, especially in those last 2 months when the weather gets colder. JJ, what are your thoughts on the Tennessee Titans?
Yeah, I guess the tough part is this team's gonna have to start pretty strong. I mean, granted, they get the Giants at home, right, to start, but then it's at Buffalo. They're gonna be at home against Vegas, at the Colts, at Washington, Colts again. And then you go at Houston and at Kansas City. But another team with a tough schedule and a tough start, which makes you think that, there's a possibility if this team was to hypothetically start like 2-3, 2-4, you could see some changes at quarterback. I don't think they're sold on Tannehill. I don't know how they could be. It's not like the guy's, I'd argue he's been their Achilles heel as an entire team. But where does the A.J. Brown production come from, right? I mean, you go out and get Robert Woods, who's not a deep threat. Treylon Burks obviously has upside. I believe he played at Arkansas. I don't think he has any type of the crazy burner speed, though. And so Dez Fitzpatrick, the kid from Louisville, has some type of burner speed. But how can you really rely on him? And Westbrook, a Keen or a Kine, I know he played at Indiana. he hasn't exactly shown that next level from his end either. I know they grab Austin Hooper too. They got a lot of possession guys. I just worry about who beats this team over the top, right? Because you're going to stack the box with Henry in most games, and without a true over-the-top guy to take the defense's lid off, I think you're just going to see, much like what you see with the Colts, but even more egregious, that you're going to consistently see 9-10 guys in the box against this team, force Tannehill's arm to beat you deep with guys who aren't specialists in that. And I think this team's going to really sputter offensively. And let's remember, this team's defense wasn't exactly great either last year. Now, I know they had that one year where they had some decent third down numbers. But I think, was it last year where they were historically bad on third down? I don't know if it was last year or the year before. This team, and if Vrabel guy, you'd figure they would have more of a defensive stance. And maybe he does a little more than he should with lack of talent. But there are some decent names in this defense. But it just seems like they continue to struggle stopping any type of relevant offense. This to me is the biggest wild card in this division as far as what you think that could come out of it. I mean, I know AJ Brown's one guy, but I just don't know who replaces him, at least early on in the year. Maybe they develop somebody and somebody becomes a stud. Again, Robert Woods is good, but not going to take the lid off of defense like AJ Brown can. So I think the recipe to beat this team is going to be pretty simple. Just load up the box, keep your safeties up until this team finds somebody that can beat you deep. And then on the defensive end, this team's going to struggle again to stop any type of relevant offense. So I know that their odds here are, what are they currently, plus 170. I actually like that less than I like the Colts at 135. But for me, I think it's a tough team to protect. I think there's a lot of volatility. I still do trust Mike Vrabel, much like I trust Frank Wright, to kind of make this team look relevant on a weekly basis. But tough to imagine this team does anything like they've been the last few years.
All right, let me ask you about AJ Brown, because like I said at the opening, when I went over, I was ranking AJ Brown really high. One of the things I like about him that I felt that Tannehill benefited from, because he has that size, you could kind of still throw it to him when he was covered, and it wasn't necessarily a dangerous throw. I think he means so much for Philadelphia. Let me ask you real quick, where do you have AJ Brown at? Do you think he's in that third tier? Is he in the second tier?
So here's my
top
problem.
receivers?
Here's my problem with ranking receivers. Like, to me, he's definitely in the second tier.
Okay.
But like, it's tough because it's so relevant to quarterback, right? Like, granted, there are some receivers in that first tier that are anomalies, right? It doesn't matter who's throwing them the ball; they'll get their numbers, they'll be fine. I don't know if Brown's there yet. I mean, Brown's a really good, a world-class receiver for sure, but I still think he's in that second tier of guys. And now he plays in Philly with Jalen Hurts, who's been unremarkable, to say the least, in terms of accuracy. But hey, look, you give him a good stud. Maybe that improves the two of them, kind of like chicken and an egg.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping.
But needless to say, I do rank him in that second tier. And I think in relation to Tennessee, I think it is a difficult replacement because of how their offense is built. I would have figured they would have wanted to try to get a speedster to replace him. They didn't. So I think it's going to be tough sledding for them offensively with any type of consistency.
Yeah, we'll see. One thing they also going for the Titans, right, is almost that Belichick effect, because how much did we write this team off when they lost Derrick Henry in the middle of the year? And then they just kept rattling off wins, and a lot of times they were 5- and 6-point dogs. So definitely give him credit there. Tyler, Tennessee Titans, your thoughts? What are you thinking?
Yeah, man, I think JJ touched on a lot of it. This team really didn't improve much from what they've had the last few years. It's almost like
could easily argue that they got worse.
I think so too. And it's almost like they were trying to duct tape it together to keep what they had the last couple years. After touching that AFC title game and losing to Kansas City, like, they got that little taste of it, and I think they just wanted to stay right where they were at. And I don't think it's possible with the roster they have. I'm not big on the Burks guy they drafted. He's not getting much separation in camp. He's not looking good through his routes. And yes, it's camp news, but usually you could take the good news with a grain of salt. And when these guys are talking bad about players coming out of camp, that's the news you want to pay attention to, because how often do you see bad news coming out? Not very often. So the bad news on him coming out, I think that's not good for them. Robert Woods isn't the guy that's going to blow the top off. So just like JJ said, stack the box. And I think that armor on Derrick Henry broke last year with his foot injury. He's a big boy. We've seen guys in the NBA spread where an injury goes to the lower body and just the pounding on it up and down the floor, that foot injury comes back. Well, if you're going to run Derrick Henry 20 to 25 games, maybe even 30 now with the way this offense is built, I don't think he makes it to week 8. I think he'll be injured again, and then this team just falls off a cliff because there is nowhere to go after that. Are you going to try and run, say, the backup running back out there? Are you going to try and get the passing game going? And I think at that point, you're just hurting the defense because they're going to be on the field more. So they're not going to look as good as they did last year. So,
yeah, his ability to stay healthy, even with that crazy workload, has been an anomaly so far. But you're right. That's one of those things that could hit a brick wall. Tyler, my number here is 9 for the over-under, minus 115 on each side at Bet Online. What do you think, man? I mean, almost
I'm
on the
going.
strength of Vrabel, I want to go over, but at the same time, I'm fine not touching this bet at all.
If Vrabel beats me, he beats me because I'm going under. I mean,
Okay.
I think they come out 1-0. They beat the Giants. I'm going to go they lose the next 3 games, Buffalo, Las Vegas, Indy. They pick up that Washington win before the bye. So they're 2-3 going into the bye. Then I'll give them the Indy game and the Houston game out of the bye. But this stretch, Kansas City, Denver, Green Bay, Cincinnati, Philly, could be where we see the quarterback change come because they could get absolutely throttled in every single one of those games. So I'm going to pencil them in to lose all 5 of those games.
Talk to me about Malik Willis real quick, Tyler. You said quarterback change. You watched a lot more college than I did. What do you think of him as a prospect? And, let's slant that to just a first-year prospect because it seems like he's got the talent to get there. I don't know if it's going to be the first year, though, even if he does get there. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's the first year. I would rather him sit on the bench for a year and then come in next year. But I could see
they're
them,
like 2-4.
Yeah, I could see them making the move to get him out there. It's kind of a bit rushed. I could see him having a couple bad games. But you've seen it in the preseason game. He's going to do what Hurts did and what Lamar did. They're going to lean more on their running than their throwing. The moment these guys see a path to run out, they're just going to run. Like Vrabel pulled Malik Willis in that preseason game because he said he wanted to see him throw the ball more and all the kid was doing is running. So if he gets into the regular season at some point, we're definitely going to target his rushing props because we know the dude's going to tuck it and run. So
Don't
that
you
is
like
something
that
to keep.
style for this team, though? I almost feel like it fits the rest of the team and Vrabel's personality better.
Oh, I think it does too, but I think the weapons don't help him out as much. Like if you had a speedster like a run down the sideline, like the dude's got a cannon on him.
Yeah.
Like if you were running a play action, that guy's breaking the seam down the middle. It's either give it to Henry or drop back and just launch it as far as you can to that guy. Then that would be the route. But I don't think Robert Woods is that guy. Like Robert Woods is more of that across the middle guy. He's not going to blow the top off of defense. So I just think they wait one more year and they retool it a little bit for Malik Willis, kind of how Baltimore did with Lamar Jackson.
JJ, you did really well betting college football last year. You probably saw a lot of Malik Willis at Liberty. What are your thoughts on him if he takes over that starting job? You're muted.
What a tough scene. It's tough to say. I mean, he had the, dare I say, liberty to play under Hugh Freeze. I think that Hugh Freeze has been a great offensive mind for a long time, and the fact that he took the Liberty job after leaving the SEC for years, you knew that offense was going to explode no matter who was there. Not to say Willis hasn't elevated his skill set. Accuracy is a problem though with him. A lot of the teams he played in that division, a lot of soft throws, a lot of easy throws. NFL is going to be a little different for him, which is probably why you're seeing him tuck and running it more because he feels safer that way. He'll develop as a quarterback, and I'm interested to see which or how he does. Early on, though, I think it'll be in his best benefit to not see much playing time this year. Just kind of taking as much as he can. But it's rare that you see quarterbacks that are that inaccurate in college become great at the NFL level. He's got a little bit of work to do.
Although to be fair, the Super Bowl leading team, right, has a guy that was pretty inaccurate in college. So
yeah.
I mean, some help there.
You could definitely pick out anomalies for sure, but I think it goes back to work ethic, right? If the kid grinds and the kid works himself, I think it could be fine. And it's not like he's got a lot of stiff competition over there, so it wouldn't be crazy that he sees starting snaps this year, even if they wildcat him a bit at times. But needless to say, I would say my prognosis isn't great on him. I'm no scout, but I think he's going to need to get some serious reps and definitely work on some deep ball accuracy as well with receivers that aren't exactly going to bail him out, which again makes it kind of tough for the kid to have success at least early on.
Yeah, I mean, could use a guy like AJ Brown. Right? I mean, it's just wild that they made that trade. I really wasn't sure what the front office was thinking. Tyler, I interrupted you in the middle of the schedule breakdown. You want to let us know where you were at and then continue? What did you have them at before I interrupted in the run where you said that Malik Willis could end up playing?
All right, so we were at 2-3 out of the bye. They win the Indy and Houston game, so that puts them at 4-3. And then I have them losing Kansas City, Denver, Green Bay, Cincinnati, and Philly. So that is 4-7. Then to Jacksonville, or at home versus Jacksonville, I think they pick up that game. And I think they lose the Charger game, pick up the wins against Houston and Jacksonville, and lose to Dallas in Week 16. So I don't think they get to that 9. Another bet I was looking at for them, they're 4-1 to finish third in this division. We're going to talk about Jacksonville next. I think they can get up to that right around like 8-9 wins and push Tennessee down to that 3 spot. I don't mind that 4-1. Another one I was looking at, lowest scoring team for the NFL season. If Henry goes down, this team ain't putting up any points. They're 28-1 to be the lowest scoring team in the NFL. They have the defense to keep games close and slow. And if they're running the ball, they're just going to keep chewing the clock up. So that's going to be one I'm going to sprinkle on also, is them to be the lowest scoring team.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting look there. Tyler, when you're breaking those down, one thing that stood out to me, I think you're a little confident about a couple of my AFC West teams. I just hate this matchup for both of them going against Tennessee, because the Raiders have problems stopping the run and the Chargers have problems stopping the run, right? I could see them sneaking those out. I could
But what
actually,
if
maybe
both of
those
those
games
teams
will
do
decide.
well, spread? Throw the ball.
Yeah.
Because Tennessee's secondary isn't going to be able to stop any of those weapons coming from either team.
Yeah, that's true. I just I hate the matchup personally for the Raiders and for the Chargers there. But so you're down on them, JJ. The not total of 9. Which way are you leaning?
Under.
Okay, you're like under too. Anything else from this team, JJ?
No, good on mine.
What about you, Tyler? Any other bets you threw out for the Tennessee Titans?
Nope, that's it for me. Just them to finish third in the division and them to be the lowest scoring team.
Well, I like it. I mean, the way you're doing it though, hitting those alts, I think that's great because I always, I've been lamenting this for a little while now. The main weakness of the way that we're doing these division previews, and if you'll listen, we're almost in lockstep with a lot of the industry, because number one, the NFL market is ridiculously efficient, and number two, we're evaluating all these teams at full strength. So we know these teams aren't going to be at full strength by week 4. There's going to be quarterbacks out. There's going to be receivers out. There's going to be D linemen, O linemen, corners, right, that are going to completely change the perspective of a team, Tyler. So rather than sit here, right, and have this money tied up on a minus 115, have it tied up on a 28-1. I think that's a great approach there, Tyler. Jacksonville Jaguars are a team that I'll be rooting for. The Khan family, owners of AEW, let's go see if they can finally get it done. Seemed like fortune shined upon them last year when they got the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck, Trevor Lawrence, and boy, Urban Meyer did a masterclass on how to ruin a great football player. It was really one of the most disastrous football, and see, I'm old, so I can say this, that I've ever seen in my whole life. One of the most disastrous attempts at coaching an NFL team. And for a guy with that much success, I'll tell you what, I was even shocked. And you know what? People had said it going into the season. This guy's not going to make it. And for whatever reason, probably won too much money betting on Ohio State over the course of my lifetime. I just didn't want to buy in. I thought that he would at least be able to design some sort of defense. And early in training camp, we were already getting the reports that he was running it like a college. And that, all these grown men at home with their kids were just like, forget this guy. It got even worse. He didn't even make it his first full season. So of any team, this has to be not just this season. I mean, this is one of the greatest coaching upgrades of all time. And it's not because Doug Peterson's that good. It's because Urban Meyer was that bad. But hey, you have to like Doug Peterson. He took a similar quarterback, a mobile quarterback in Carson Wentz, really made him look real good, ran that all the way, transferred it over to Foles, got the Super Bowl. Now he gets his second chance. I didn't think that he did that bad in Philadelphia. It seemed more of a style or culture thing than an actual poor performance that got him shown the door with the Eagles. Now he gets another chance with the kid that, hey, let's be honest. I mean, I love this kid coming out of college. I thought the Jaguars were just set when they drafted him. They blew his rookie year. They got to really make sure they develop him right this year. But I think they have the right guy to do it. They added some guys to help him. I don't think they got an A.J. Brown, but at least they did something, right? Unlike some of these other guys, right, that just made you, like for Justin Fields, right, when we talked about the Bears. I mean, they didn't do anything to help him. At least they're trying to help Trevor Lawrence. Christian Kirk is there, which is funny because I wasn't necessarily high on him. I thought it was more the system that produced those results. So now he'll get a chance to see if he really earns that money. But JJ, Jacksonville, I think they're a fun team to talk about. I'll tell you what, even though we don't have Super Bowl contenders a lot when we're doing this division preview, I think this is a fun team with a lot of variance and a lot of possible outcomes. What are your thoughts on the Jaguars?
Yeah, so favorite bet for all this is going to be them over their team total, which is 6.5. You get plus
All
110 DK. For me, it's a few things. So I am a Peterson guy. I was throughout Philly, and as you know, my wife's a pretty big Eagles fan. So, I get to follow that team a lot more than maybe I'd want to. And I was a big Peterson guy. And here's the thing, though: a lot of Peterson's success came when Frank Wright was his right hand. It seemed that they kind of went south after Wright went to the Indy. But I still think he's a pretty good offensive mind, and you get arguably the best quarterback to come out of high school in like a decade in Lawrence. And now they give him a little chemistry behind him, for those Mario baseball folks that like those musical notes. Travis Etienne, a guy he's all that familiar with, playing behind him, and those two have had years of chemistry together. So I like that. As for Kirk, I've never been a big Kirk guy, but when you look at this team, he's got speed. Definitely can keep a defense honest, which is good. They might use him as more of a possession guy. It was weird how the Cardinals used him. It was like they used him for a little bit of both, instead of really trying to just pot commit. I think you're going to see him get a little more love there. And Chenault is a hybrid player who should be seeing a lot more touches this year. I know the guy hasn't been able to stay healthy, but he's an absolute freak. For his size, his hands, his athleticism, hoping to see a little more action from him. And I guess they went out and they have Zay Jones, but I don't know. I'm more of a Marvin Jones guy. So to me, I think you're going to see those three receivers be that with Chenault, and Zay'll take a back seat. But they even go out and get Evan Ingram, who runs some of the better routes for tight ends, but has some of the worst hands in the league. Interested to see if somehow that can get cleaned up, because the dude had so much upside coming out of college, but he turned into nothing for the Giants. And as for defensively, I don't love anything about this defense. It's hard to love anything about this defense. But when you compare it to the defenses in this league, it's in this division, it's not like you're like, wow, how is this team going to hold up defensively? I think they're comparable to a lot of the other defenses in this division. So when you look at it from all those perspectives, I think the Jaguars are going to be live in almost every division game they play this year. They have a few games where they'll be favored out of division. I think it's very realistic that they're going to be 3 points or less of an underdog in 8 to 10 games this year, or better. So I think you're gonna have that. You're gonna have to ask them to win a few games as underdogs and win the games they're supposed to. Which I don't think is crazy when you bring in a win-minded coach in Peterson. And I know they brought over Taylor's brother from Cincinnati to run the offense. The Press, I think, is his name. He's been a Peterson guy, so I'm sure there's trust there. To me, this big thing's gonna be the offense. Can they get Lawrence's confidence up, and can they get him back to playing how he really should be? I like the chemistry add with Etienne. They got some athletic pieces around him. I think this team can figure some things out offensively with this new system in place. And again, they're not going to get a lot of resistance in this division defensively. I think it's going to be a nice little breakout year for our friend at quarterback.
Yeah, I think so too. I really think a lot of his problems were really Urban Meyer. And then one thing I'd say in pro Peterson, you talked about things falling apart when Frank Reich left. If you looked at it, the injury report also fell apart. And of course, that was 5 years ago. So forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think other than Carson Wentz, that was their run in 2017. I don't think they had any injuries at all, right? And then they've definitely struggled with that the last couple of years. So that might have something to do with it as well. JJ is high on the Jaguars, Tyler. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with him. I think the Jags are going to have a nice season. I like that over the win total pick. This is one of the ones spread I wish we had, instead of comeback player of the year, we had most improved when it comes to the NFL futures, because we would hammer Trevor Lawrence in this spot.
Right.
He gets the coaching switch. I got a hot take on the Christian Kirk contract. I think a lot of guys are going to say he's overpaid. We went from being a number 2 to a 3 to a number 1 now. If this guy does explode and he's getting 8 to 9 targets a game, becomes a 100-yard-a-game receiver, that $72 million is going to look like a steal for the next couple of years. So you overpay him now and cross your fingers, and hopefully Lawrence can turn him into a key weapon. I think Zay Jones played better for the Raiders towards the end of the year. You've seen that spread. He was stretching the field for them. Derek Carr was hitting him on deep balls. Lawrence does love throwing that deep ball. We've seen that at Clemson. And Etienne is going to be his little safety blanket, because they already said they're using him in the passing game more. So don't be surprised if he gets that Le'Veon Bell treatment when he was in Pittsburgh, where he slots out into the slot, runs a couple slants, and catches balls that way too. And as for the defense, I mean, Josh Allen's probably the best guy on that defense, the edge rusher. If they get anything out of Trayvon Walker on the other side in his first year, and they have 2 key edge rushers, it's just going to help the secondary and the linebacking core, which isn't the best. I was looking, DraftKings has a special on just division wins. Their number's at 2.5. I think they take both games from Houston, and I think they could take one or the other ones from the Colts or Tennessee. So I like that over there at minus 120.
That's a fantastic bet.
Yeah, I like that one. And then the other one I was looking at was just the win total on them. Or if you wanted to do, they have the division top 2 forecast. Colts Jaguars is 5-1. I wouldn't hate playing that either.
Your bet's better though, Tyler, than mine, because the only way they get to 7 wins is I'm expecting them to win at least 3 division games. So
I think they do too. I wouldn't be surprised if they split all three with all 3 teams.
Yeah, so I like your bet better because, I mean, to me, the only way I'm getting a 7 is if they cash at least 3 division games.
I got you. And then, I mean, looking at the schedule, I mean, it's a little bit of a gauntlet to start.
Josh doesn't like it. Our guy Josh Gillum in the chat.
They probably get week 1. But they might start the year 2-0, to be honest with you, Spread, because that second game is Indy at home. So they could beat Washington week 1, beat Indy. Now they're 2-0. Chargers, Philly will go 2-2. Then they get Houston. That's 3-2. Indy 3-3. Giants 4-3. They're losing them next 3 games before the bye. Denver, Las Vegas, Kansas City. They're losing that first game out of the bye against Baltimore. But then they could get Detroit. I think they could beat Tennessee. They could give Dallas a chance. They're going to beat the Jets, and they're going to beat Houston that second time. And then week 18 is Tennessee. So, I mean, it's a tough schedule, but there's some spots where they can get some hiccup wins.
Yeah, I mean, to me, you just break apart their schedule in 5s, right? Like, because for me, they could easily go 2-3 in their first 5 games. They could upset Washington. To me, Philly's not a gauntlet by any means. They get Houston in there as well. And you said at home against Indy, that line will be small regardless. If they can go at least 2-3 there, then you go the next 2 to win 2 out of 3 out of the next 5 games. You're home against the Giants, where you'll likely be favored. The Denver game is going to be closer, I think, than people think. Vegas game, again, another home game, closer than people think. At the Colts, there's no shoo-in of a loss either. Then you take the next 5 games. Can they win 2 of these next 3? I mean, 2 of the can they go 2-3 over the next 5? There's some winnable games there to me. At Detroit, at Tennessee, home against Dallas. I mean, at the Jets. And then the last 2 games are at Houston and home against Tennessee. 2 games where, to me, they could very well win those 2 games. So if I can get them to be 2-3 over those 5 games 3 different times, which will get us at 6-10 with 2 games left, 2 winnable games left, to me that's exactly where I'd want to be.
Yeah, I mean, so if I said right now minus 110, will they play Malik Willis in week 18? What do you think? I would say they will.
I mean, it depends. Like for me, I almost feel like this team's going to be competing for the division. Like I don't know who they're.
I'm just saying, I think they have a good chance against Tennessee that Malik Willis is running the team by then, and they're getting ready for the next season.
Peterson will pull the hammer. Like he'll pull the ripcord. He surprisingly he had it a little tighter with Wentz, but Wentz kind of earned it because he was on that unanimous MVP year before he got hurt. But he'll have a quick trigger finger there if needed. So we might be seeing Willis even earlier than that.
All right, Tyler, what else do you have here for the Jacksonville Jaguars?
That was pretty much it for it, Spread. I mean, we touched on the defense. We touched on their offensive pickups. I think we found a few good bets on them. And there's no really long shots to bet on them unless you think they do have a chance of winning the division, which I think the Colts might just top them out there and take it. So I'm going to stick with that over 2.5 on their division wins and them to finish second in the division at 5-1.
Yeah, and we've seen some worst to first turnarounds. Seems like we have one every single year, and this wouldn't be that surprising because we're not high on this division compared to the rest of the league as well. Josh says the Jags spent a ton of money this offseason. That alone should be 2 wins. Yeah, and I'll tell you what about Christian Kirk, Tyler. I didn't think he was that good, but I also felt they needed to do it because you have this generational guy here in Lawrence, and if you have 2 years of no development, it really, hinders your chance to make him good.
About that contract Spread, just like I said, if they turn him into a number 1 weapon, now he's not making $90 million like the rest of these elite receivers, and you can go out and get another one to put next to him, or keep free up some money on the defense. So
Yeah, and even if you overpay him, if he helps the development and you don't just sink this kid, which is a possibility at this point, because you get 2 or 3 bad years and you're labeled as done. Look at the way that we view Mitch Trubisky, right? And they didn't give him a lot to work with there. So you really gotta take chances with these guys. So while I do think it's an overpay, while I don't think he's that good, I still think the Jaguars pretty much had to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
So, all right, anything else for the Jaguars, JJ?
No, good on mine.
Let's go to the Houston Texans here. Well, at least they're not under the cloud of Deshaun Watson anymore. Their win totals over 4.5. Although that's juiced to minus 140, and I can see why. They have a coach that, let's be honest, he knows what he's doing. He spent a lot of time in the NFL, and I do believe he has the respect of the players, which is important. Davis Mills showed some signs of being a capable NFL quarterback. I don't think he'll ever be a top 5 quarterback, but I think he can be a 10 to 20 quarterback. And, if you get the rest of your team right, you can compete that way. I think they did great in the draft. The kid Stingley looks awesome. And those type of corners can really change everything. Look how the kid Diggs really helped out Dallas last year just by making plays and getting that defense excited. Those takeaways mean so much in a league that almost just gives you 20 to 20 now. Those takeaways are so important. So, at first I was really down on the Texans, but I can see this team sneaking some wins in. Now they're going to be underdogs most weeks. I think they're going to cover a lot of games, and I think they're going to sneak out some money line wins as well. But JJ, I know you're down on this team. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to kind of be down on 3 teams in the same division, right? Because I mean, they beat up on each other, but man, it's hard to love anything about what's going on with this team. I'm not I've never been a huge Lovie Smith guy. I know that he had some really good defenses for years in Chicago, but I mean, outside of that, like I question his ability to develop offense, and I think can't think of the offensive coordinator's name, but
Is it Pep Hamilton?
Kelly, is it Kelly Throssey?
I thought it was Pep Hamilton. Let me look it up right now.
Is it Tim Kelly? Maybe?
Houston's OC? Is that who we're talking?
Oh, it is Tim Kelly. I'm sorry.
No, he's the Titans actually. Oh no, yeah. Is it? I think he's the Titan. I think you're right. I think it is Pep Hamilton.
Yeah, I'm about to say I'm reading Pep Hamilton's the OC.
Yeah, okay, I was right. Okay, yeah.
So
I saw Kelly. It was.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this is a young team, a relatively young team that needs some development. And Davis Mills, I mean, has upside at times, but man, it's tough to love what you see from him on a week in and week out basis. Marlon Mack's a guy I really like at running back. The problem is the guy can't stay healthy, so I don't know how long he's going to last. Brandon Cooks is a guy that you continue to scratch your head on. How is this guy on a winless team? He's too talented to continue to take snaps on this team. But yeah, I mean, you're just talking an offense all around that where are you going to get any levels of consistent production from? And again, this is going to be the worst defense in this division. So I know the win total's low, but I mean, man, you might be live in like 5 games all year, let alone win 5 games. When I say live, like live late, I mean, granted, you can hang around the teams for 3 quarters, but there's such a talent gap here between a lot of teams. And I think even if Lovie Smith develops this team into something big, it's going to take him some time before they kind of get out from under themselves. But to my point, I know I haven't been a big Lovie Smith guy in general. But he may just be what this team needs from a few different ways because he's a unique style type of head coach. But all in all, yeah, consider me bearish on this team as well.
Yeah, I can see that as well. I'll tell you what, I do agree though. He might be what the team needs. I think he's going to develop the team and teach these kids how to be professional. Right. I mean, I don't think they have the roster to really compete. So it's not like you're blowing this window by having a guy that maybe, I mean, you mentioned it. The offense is really a concern. I think he's going to be able to dial up pretty good defensive game plans every week. Let's see what Pep Hamilton can do on the other side. So I was a little optimistic on this team. JJ's the exact opposite. Tyler, where do you stand?
Yeah, I mean, I think this team's picking top 3 in this draft coming up. Wow, and I think Davis Mills is kind of free rolling because did come out in the 3rd round last year behind all those top tier quarterbacks that were supposed to be really good. Yep. And he probably played the best out of them. So like they kind of just took that
for Mac.
Yeah, I mean, well, if you take Max, but I mean, I think that was more the defense and the running game kind of padded him in there.
Okay.
But as from an overall throwing quarterback standpoint, I think Davis Mills had a better year than him. So I'd say he's more free rolling it. They're kind of taking it as like if he plays the lead or does take a step forward, we'll take it. But if he doesn't, they'll just take a quarterback in this upcoming draft with the 4 guys coming out. And they're in a good spot, too. They got the wide receivers. They got a few offensive line pieces, and they started to build the defense in this past draft. But, I mean, looking at their schedule for this year, I don't see how they win 5 games. They start Indy, Denver. That's 0-2. They play Chicago. They're probably 1-2 there. There's their 1 win. But then the Chargers, Jacksonville, Las Vegas, Tennessee, Philly, those are all losses to me. They maybe beat the Giants. Then they play Washington, Miami, Cleveland, Dallas, Kansas City, Tennessee, Jacksonville, Indy. I don't see many wins coming out of there unless teams just flat out give them the game. So I'm going to go with the under there. And if we could find something where, like, it's the team to pick first overall in next year's draft, they'd probably be my pick for that.
Wow. Okay. So you guys are both down on this team. I seem to be a little higher. Then I guess just market expectations here. It's 4.5. It's such a low win total in a wild NFL where anything can happen. I do think they're going to compete every week. I don't think you'll back them and really feel like, boy, this team didn't give a good effort.
I found our bet spread.
Okay.
What we went with the Jets is what we do with these bad teams. First win. They probably lose that Colts game. Probably lose the Denver game. They probably beat the Bears. For that to be their first win is plus 290. I think that's the best bet we're going to find on this team.
I don't hate that, and it's only week 3.
You can actually pick that game to be their first win at plus 290. Because think about it, like you're at minimum going to have some headroom because even if they were to get absolutely blown the doors off in the first 2 games, what are they going to be? Maybe plus 3? Maybe plus 3.5? How could they even be that big? I mean, they have to absolutely get blown out for it to be that line week 3. So, I mean, for me, you're as long as they don't surprise week 1 or week 2, which they really shouldn't, you're going to be getting 3-1 back on that bet.
Yeah, I would say I like that one. And if you think somehow the Bears squeak that game out, I'd say their next winnable game on that schedule is probably Jacksonville. They're 7-1. And then after that, it's probably the Giants, and the Giants are 35-1.
What week is the Giants?
It's right around week 10 after their bye week.
Oh, actually, I don't hate that either. So, all right. Well, Tyler's always digging in there because I think you have to do that. And I'll reiterate the point, but you don't want to lay minus 110 for 20 weeks. You want to really be searching for those big numbers that have the hedge possibilities. So overall, JJ, some fun teams to preview. Sounds like we're higher on the Jags, split on the Texans. And we feel the market's right on the Titans and the Colts. Sounds like to me, if you were to guess, this team's only going to put 1 team in the playoffs in a stacked AFC conference.
Yeah, it'd be shocking. Absolutely shocking for this team to get more than 1 team in the playoffs. It's going to be one of those things where they're going to win a division, so they're likely going to host a game with a wild card team with a better record. Anything could happen from that point. I mean, I know you don't expect these teams to win, but there'll be a relative fan base that shows up to whoever wins this division. Or like I said, or you can get one of these teams that just looks like the GOAT in the division all year, and they deserve to look better, or maybe they look better than we all think. Like I said, to me, I think that there's some value on the Jaguars to have a much improved year. Because when we talk value, right, or a team stinks or a team is good, you're really basing it off the market, right? Like everybody knows, the Texans aren't going to be good. Everybody knows the Jets aren't going to be that good. You're basing it off what the market's offering. I think with what the market's offering, I think there's some good value on the Jaguars to have a better year than the market thinks.
Yeah, and back to the point that I keep hammering home, most of the time when the market's wrong, it's due to unforeseen circumstances and not the fact that they're just not evaluating these players correctly. Tyler, any other AFC South division bets?
No bets, but just I looked at the 5-year win trend for Tennessee, or not Tennessee, Houston. 4 wins, 4 wins, 4 wins. And in 2018, 2019, it was 11-10 wins for both those years. That was all Watson doing his magic and dragging this team along. There is no more of that.
Andrew Hopkins in too. I mean, that was a nice 1-2 combination.
He was the guy leading the engine. You know what I mean? Like, he was the star there. They haven't won more than 4 games since he left. I don't see this year being the year they do it.
Yeah, I mean, at least they have that cloud out of their team, though, right? They sent that problem to Cleveland, and I bet you they're pretty happy.
I agree, and they also, even though they dumped picks to get Tunsil there a few years ago to help Watson, they managed to stockpile picks in the upcoming draft. They have multiple first-round picks in 2022, 2023, and 2024. and they have an extra 4th rounder next year. So they could keep loading up on these rookies. They get a couple that hit, this team's going to start to make their way back up the rankings.
And if you look at the decision to bring Davis Mills back, it's because Bill O'Brien tore down this franchise so bad that there's no reason to go all in now. What were you going to say, JJ?
Yeah, I was just saying, like, historically in the sport, you just don't see a team be bottom of the wheelbarrow bad for a decade. Because of the way the drafts work, because of the way draft work, the picks work. You're not going to get every trade wrong for a year. Like, it's just not going to work that way. Cleveland Browns were the one team that was a true anomaly in that sense, where it's like, how is this team this bad every year? But even they finally turned the corner. I don't expect Houston to be bad much longer. I've given 3 to 4 years. With all the picks they have loaded up, not going to surprise if this team becomes the face of this division in years to come. But it won't be now, and it won't be next year. It's going to take them some time.
Yeah, still a little worried about this ownership group. Who's the guy that ran Watson out? Jack Easterby, I believe. Now, before he had a headset last year, which is wild to have your GM or team president on a headset. I mean, I haven't heard of that since the days that they hear, Al Davis calling down and saying, throw a bomb, right?
Like the show Ballers on HBO.
Yeah. Yeah. If you take it back a little farther to the ESPN Great Show Playmakers. So that is our thoughts there on the AFC South. I think there's a lot of fun variations, and I think these teams are going to be fun to bet and watch week to week. I think there'll be a lot of variance here. But like we said, not a lot of Super Bowl contention without some sort of blockbuster trade, or if Matt Ryan goes to Germany and gets like whatever Kobe Bryant kept getting injected into his body every offseason, right? And comes back looking like a 25-year-old. But reminder, this was brought to you by Run Pure Sports and RunPureBets.com. Head on over to Run Pure Sports. Use that promo code GetBets to become a member. If you're watching now, hit the like button. If you're watching on replay, like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And hey, maybe even give us a like and the retweet on the Twitter machine. JJ, any words of wisdom before we sign off?
As always, folks, gamble responsibly.
Run